teens through the ages and the culture of the American teenager throughout the years, or from the past 50 years. As a culture, events have changed teens among the various classes of teens, and in return, society has in turn changed from teen events. Every decade had a major event that changed people's lives, either for good or for bad. In a span of 50 years, how can we go from the Leave It to Beaver family and the hand jive to the Running Man and to Teen Mom? We're going to look at the major influences and major events that molded these young teenagers throughout the years. There are many stereotypes that came along over the decades, from crew cuts and greasers to mohawks and neon clothes. And how about the fashions as they've changed throughout the years? Also, as I said, every decade has major events that have changed. In the 50s, the American teens enjoyed a life filled with fun and values that were instilled on them both from society and from school. Things like going to the malt shop, sharing a malt drink, or spending time necking at the drive-in. This was a post-war era. Americans didn't have a war this time to worry about. It was a time of prosperity and very much of family values. Schools also incorporated videos to scare certain values into covering topics such as hygiene, respect, and family values. Also, the family at that point in time was very important, and families actually spent time together indulging either in a good meal or watching the new TV shows such as I Love Lucy. Although there was good times, the other side of it was racism and segregation were still very prominent in the 50s and leading into the early 60s. In turn, what was a good, solid decade turned into a lot of riots, and still lynching was actually very prominent at that point in time. Why could teens not accept other teens of a different color? Normalcy in a society that was status-driven. It was instilled over the years by parents into these teens and would carry over for decades to come. Remember that racism and segregation, that was not things that you're born with, it is things that you are learned. Following the start of the Vietnam War, teens typically started looking at, and the younger generations still looked at protests, but focused more on peaceful protests, love, things like anti-poverty, togetherness, and equality. And how do young people in the 60s and 70s work together to come together in love and harmony? Drugs and music led the way for that expression of life. Expression has always been key over the years, especially moving into 70s and 80s. Music played a big part in how society and young people came about. They were influenced by bands like the Youngbloods, and come about in the 80s by groups like Twisted Sister, which taught revolt and rebellion against authoritative figures. This also led to appearances and expression. People wanted to express who they were. Very conservative in the 50s and 60s. People moved into a lot of nakedness in the 70s, and into the 80s, they expressed themselves by the rebellion, I'm going to dress how I want, neon clothes and everything like that. That was very much atrocious. Leading into the 90s and up to the past decade, the Center of Disease Control estimates there are 19 million new STDs every year, and almost half fall into the category of young teens nowadays, which is very unheard of back in the day. Teen pregnancies, as an example, in the 50s, you were shunned and ostracized from your families. They didn't want you. You were practically disowned at this point in time. Nowadays, it seems to be very common to have teen pregnancies and single moms. Also, decades ago, there were only two common STDs, syphilis and gonorrhea. Now there are more than 25 and counting. Why? Because sex is out there nowadays. Sex is a part of our lives. Advertising, it's all over. News magazines, TV shows, 90210, they teach kids to dress sexy and to lose respect for one another. Even something as simple as the car washes you see along the roads nowadays seem to attract a lot of guys for very much the wrong reasons. Back in the 50s, we had the model family, and typically comprised of the mom, the dad, and several children. Typically 2 to 3 was the average. And the normal family there, being normal, had the dad as the breadwinner, the mom as the homemaker, and the kids each had their own duties. The girls typically learned a lot of household duties in addition to going to school. And the boys, well, they were boys. Decades ago, they indulged in very much just fun, wholesome type entertainment, such as American Bandstand and shows like that came about, and just good, honest fun. Throughout the 70s, love continued, everything like that. But then some trials and tributes, or some problems, I should say, of nowadays is things such as same-sex marriages and stuff, which causes a lot of controversy and a lot of confusion amongst young people in today's society. Decades ago, teens had a lot of pride in what they earned. Most had an honest job. They usually worked in the family business. They earned their letters for track, and they were very proud of that, and it was expressed in a lot of music that they had. And it was built on a sense of just duty and pride in what they did. Further along, moving into that 60s and 70s, there was a big false world created by sex and drugs and free love, everything like that. And it's a picture that the media itself did create for us. Media has run a lot as far as how we view young people over the years. And there's also a hidden side to the other side of it, that it wasn't always this harmonious sort of world at that point in time. And today seems to be a world of expectations and things that were not built. Everything seems to be expected and kind of handed to them. And there's less pride in the family at this point in time, so we need to work at trying to mold our young youth into instilling good values. In conclusion, there's always been something new to be expressed and something new to be said by young people, whether it be in protests or on TV or influential for one another or clubs or stuff throughout high school. Teens and young adults have always had a big influence on themselves and the world they live in. What differences have you seen along the years as a person growing up? And every stamp or every decade has a stamp that goes along with it. What y'all's?